Okay, all right, we got something very impressive today. This is one I've been actually looking forward to talking about for quite a while, and now I can. I'm very excited. So this is a bunch of different revamps of the Toa Nuva as well as the Toa Mata. It's a sort of 2-for-1 deal here. All of these were built by the wonderful Brandon Builds, and these are called the definitive editions of the Toa Mata and the Toa Nuva. So we're going to go through all of them today in this episode. Let's get right to it, because there's a lot to talk about and a lot to love. The first one, of course, is Kopaka. I adore these shots of Kopaka with the string of Krana that he's collected and this like ray cloth that's flowing in the breeze like it's some kind of scarf. Gorgeous. Something about that dark tan up against the white, the silver, and the grey. It's just really, really pretty. Plus this string of Krana, this is a callback to an older promotional art image that had essentially the same thing. And yeah, I remember as a kid really loving that image. I thought it was such a cool concept that Kopaka had defeated that many Borok and was collecting the Krana after he, defeated them. Yeah, it's great to see that immortalized here on an actual physical build. It's really cool. The whole torso construction is also really stunning. I love this lower waist and how those white macaroni tubes have been used. The three of them angled like that is great, and then it's nice how just in between that they've placed that belt wheel pulley piece. Just a really clean looking design. It makes for a great overall torso, or I guess that's just the waist, but the rest of the torso is lovely too. All of this is such a clean design. I mean, look at the transition from the CCBS torso armor piece into those silver Rakshi heads for the shoulder armor. It looks so good, and it really does capture the look of the original Toa Nuva armor just flawlessly. The weapon's also really fun too. It's a great way of extending Kopaka's original weapon and adding in some trans blue details. It's also got those funky straps in the center there. It looks really cool. And this shield, I like the shield a lot too. It could have gone for that circular design like the original set had, but I don't know, the sleek angles of this and just like the energy of it matches this definitive edition vibe that this revamp has. So that change is very, very welcome here. Really enjoy that. So yeah, I mentioned before the Mata version. So he has a Mata version of this, which is fairly similar, but just a few different kind of color swaps and things like that. But great to see the G2 mask in action here. I think the slightly more sleek look of that mask was a better choice than the original Mata mask. And yeah, it's great to see that the actual sort of overall concept for this, with a few minor changes, can suddenly just be transformed into something very different. And yeah, I know, I could talk about this for a while. There's a lot to love about this, but we've only seen one. So let's dive into the others, because they all share some similar things, but they're all vastly different at the same time. So we'll move over now to Lewa. I love this. I just love this. The fact that Brandon didn't just repeat the exact same kind of basic look for Kopaka and just swap out the colors to fit Lewa. I love that that's not what happened here. Instead, Brandon has made a more lanky, skinnier version of Lewa, which it just makes so much sense for the character. I mean, even just looking at the original art for Lewa Mata, he's swinging around, jumping from tree to tree. He's just so full of life, and that's just so much more fitting for these kind of skinnier proportions here. He looks more like an acrobat or a dancer or something. It just makes sense, right? So really good call here, Brandon. It just fits so perfectly. You've captured the essence of the character and brought it to life in such a fresh, distinct, and visually impressive way. And also there's a lot of great techniques here too. For example, I love this leg design, using a lot of those tires and then some 2x2 round bricks to get that longer leg. It works. Plus the textures of these system parts, they just tie in very nicely into the CCBS armor pieces that are just above that on the upper legs and the knees. Plus, I think the choice to use the shield with bar handle parts in lime for that knee design, is very nice. I think that these look like knee pads or knee armor, which I guess would make sense if he's jumping around a lot that he would have that. But also the energy of this piece. It shoots up and juts out at a fun angle, and it just really proudly states that this is a knee design. And the same energy, I think, is pretty similar to Lewa's personality in the way that he moves as well. He jumps up high, he flies around since he is a Toa of air, and I think he pretty proudly states who he is in his own weird and wonderful way. I love it as a technique. It looks cool, but it's also nice that it says something about the character as well. That's some good character design. Oh yeah, and then the shaping on the sides of the torso here. However Brandon has achieved that stunning curve there with those curved slopes, man, it looks really sleek and just really nice. The torso design as a whole is a massive win for Brandon there. This might be one of my favorite torsos on all of these different builds. Really, really cool. And yeah, anytime you can introduce unique angles like that, it's always going to look pretty good. Again, Brandon's built a version of Lewa Mata in a similar style, and it's all fairly similar to the Nuva version that we saw before, but yet the subtle color changes, they fit the Mata vibe very well, and it looks cool in both different versions. Now, one thing about this build, same with Kopaka and actually all of the Toa we're about to look at today, I'm going to do my best to articulate this because it's harder to put into words, but it reminds me of this Pokemon meme where it's, this image here and it's, here's the famous battle of you battling Pokemon Trainer Red in the old Pokemon Gold and Silver games. Now, it's easily one of the hardest and most well-loved battles in just the whole series of Pokemon. But looking at the game itself, like you can see here, it looks pretty dull, it doesn't look that exciting, especially if you're like an outside eye that knows nothing about Pokemon. You just be kind of like, what am I looking at here? The excitement and the levels of hype that a Pokemon fan has when they're doing that and playing that, they're very different. But when a Pokemon fan who knows their stuff, or at least has played the game before, when they see this battle, it looks like this image. It's epic, it's exciting, you feel like you're a Pokemon master, you're living your dreams of the reality of the Pokemon anime coming to life. It's so much cooler. It's one of those sort of classic examples of something looking cooler in your mind than it actually maybe physically does in reality. And I think these definitive editions of the Toa Mata and the Toa Nuva that Brandon has built, they feel the same way to me, as cool as the original toys looked. When I was a kid and I played with them in my imagination, they looked 1,000 times cooler, in the same way that it does with the Pokemon Trainer Red battle. My head would run wild and see these awesome badass versions of the characters, and the toys had so much story and personality to them that they became larger than life in, the same way as the Pokemon meme. And I think that's why I like these so much. Brandon has somehow captured the insane, awesome essence of the Toa Mata and the Toa Nuva that I had in my head when I was a young child. And then he's brought it into the physical world, so it's just exciting to see it. He's taken the essence, the personality, and I guess like the truth of these characters and given it life in the same way that like a professional actor does to a character that they're playing in a movie. It's really clear that Brandon really understands these characters as well as the art of character design, because he's able to give life to these images of these characters that I've had in my head since I was a kid. And honestly, I've never seen anyone like kind of physically build those images in actual Lego bricks, but Brandon has. I think it just takes real skill to be able to do that. Not that he was looking inside my head to, recreate this, but I don't know, he's just captured the essence of these characters in just, I don't know, insanely good ways that I've just never seen before. I hope that all makes sense. Now, words can't fully describe or articulate what I'm thinking here, but just know that I love these builds, and I love the way that Brandon has captured the way that we all imagined them as a kid and brought it to life in Lego. And Lewa might be the best example of that. But with that said, let's move over to Gali now, because I can't talk about Lewa for 3 hours, otherwise we'll be here all day. So you may have noticed by now that all of these revamps have some kind of like lovely accessory that Brandon has added, and I think those are all very, very welcome additions, but these ones might be the best ones. Or at least one of the best ones. I actually like another one just a little bit more, but we'll get to that later in the episode. So not only do these green accents look phenomenal up against these different shades of azure and blue that Gali has, but they remind me of her home, as we see in the images of Garkoro in the Matanui Online game. It's got these lovely lily pads and other plant life mixed in with the water. It kind of just makes sense that you would also then see elements of that plant life on Gali herself. So, with that context in mind, this is really fun. The very G2 inspired weapon for Gali looks wonderful, and I love how Brandon has really taken ideas from basically every version of Gali and packed it into this one specific revamp. Even if it's just some more like subtle notes, I feel like this really earns the title of Definitive Edition because it pays homage to every single version of Gali. Even if it's just like these fins on the base of her legs, which kind of remind me of the really sleek, like almost jet fighter look of Mystica Gali. Or, the use of the G2 mask, or the silver armor looking like the Nuva version. I don't know, I feel like a lot of it pays homage to all sorts of different versions of the character, and that's just awesome. Looking now at the Mata version of the definitive edition of this character, it's cool how well-shaped the limbs are. They use these wedges and other slopes that just tie in so well with the CCBS parts that have been used on the lower leg and the rest of the body as well. Now, I love on the leg too, the lower leg specifically, this slight jutting out of that CCBS armor shell on the top there of the lower leg. It really helps transition it into the knee in a quite nice way. I don't know, it's a subtle thing, but I like it. Oh yeah, and if you're curious, here's a few images of how Brandon built the custom heads for these revamps. It looks gorgeous, and it should easily hold pretty much any of the G2 masks, I imagine. It does appear to require some cut flex tube to be able to attach those eyes, but it looks good, so who cares if you have to cut those pieces? It's a great design. On to Onua now, and this one actually I think has the best accessories. This is the one I was talking about before. I love all these different crystals in different pouches and things like that. Again, this makes sense for the character because they are underground a lot of the time, mining and doing all that sort of stuff. So yeah, great idea. And the colors of all those crystals, it adds some nice contrasting colors to the color palette. Really cool. There's even this lovely hint of sand green that Brandon has added onto the torso, and there's also a little bit on the feet as well. That's cool. You know, obviously the black and the dark bluish grey with a few hints of light bluish grey. It's a nice color scheme. But man, the inclusion of just a little something extra, it's a really good call. Breaks it up a little bit, makes it look pretty. It's nice to see those big bulky cone pieces on the lower arm design here. Now, normally we see 2x2 versions of that piece on MOCS. Well, MOCS we've at least spoken about on previous episodes of the Bionicle Inspiration series. But seeing the 3x3 version here, that's just really refreshing. And you gotta love the big, bulky, chunky look of Onua. So really good call to use those here. It certainly adds a bit of bulk to the character. Now, the Toa Mata definitive version of Onua, it looks certainly the most different compared to the other ones that we've been looking at, because there's a lot more changes to this one. Most notably, of course, is the awesome claw design. That's so cool to see that a bit more blown up for a larger version of the character here, and it certainly looks a bit different from that original claw piece, but still captures the essence. It's real nice. Oh yeah, and then those macaroni pieces in black that add some interesting curvature to Onua's torso. Such a nice look. Those macaroni pieces are just, they're some of the best pieces that LEGO makes, and we've already seen them on a few different MOCs here, and we'll probably see it on the next one, which is, oh no, I'm thinking of Tahu. The next one is Pohatu, but we will see them on Tahu. Just stay tuned. I love me some big, sturdy looking legs on Pohatu. Again, it makes sense for the character since he's the kicky guy, always kicking things. And then when we take a look at the back of the legs, they have included some pistons on the back of the legs. I think that's a bit of a stroke of genius. It just makes sense because, like I said, kicky guy, makes sense that there maybe be some sort of, I don't know, reinforced piston on the back of the leg to make that a bit easier or weaponize it a little bit more or something. I don't know. I love it. It's a good inclusion. And man, those piston pieces, they're such an awesome part. Just look at it. The interesting metal piece on it and all that sort of stuff. What a gorgeous part. It looks great here, and it'd probably look even better on one of your MOCs as well. So if you don't have any of these piston pieces, maybe invest in one or two of them because they're pretty cool and they're pretty helpful. These lime additions are another great touch. And also you can see here on the torso, these stickers that have been placed on the center of those CCBS chest armor pieces. Great touch. I believe those were just some custom stickers, but they work really well, and it's a lovely inclusion. I do believe, actually, because when I saw these at Brick Fair this year, Brandon actually just removed the printing on some of those torso pieces, because a lot of those torso pieces come printed on various G2 LEGO sets. So yeah, he just rubbed that off, put the sticker over the top, and he was done. So I mean, I think that's a great idea to do that, but you know, sometimes people are a little adverse to modifying pieces in some fashion, but removing printing, that doesn't always upset too many people. You know, if you're starting to cut pieces and stuff, that's where some people might get a little bit upset. But you know what? Are you happy? If you're modifying pieces and it brings you joy, that's all that matters. So if you want to do that, I think it's a great idea, because look how good it looks on Brandon's MOC. You could maybe do the same. The Mata revamp version of this is very nice, very clean. There's just a lot to love about all these different builds here, isn't there, Brandon? You nailed it. Anyway, now we'll actually talk about Tahu. Looking at the torso now, I love the fact that there's all these gears poking out at the top of the torso. I don't believe they serve any actual function, but they look nice. And it's a good callback to the original set, which had the same sort of vibe, but actually had a play function for it. Either way, it looks cool. Now, these slight adjustments to Tahu's blades, where Brandon has added in minifigure flames, I like that. Seeing a mix of the blue and the orange flames is also cool, I think for multiple reasons. The first being, when we actually look at the overall MOC, we can see that Brandon has added in some slight bits of blue to the color scheme. Now, I believe this is a callback to Tahu Uniter, who did actually have a little bit of blue in his color scheme as well. So the fact that the flames slightly mirror that, that's cool, but also, from a science perspective, flames turn blue when they get super hot. So, you know, it works from a science perspective and a cool color scheme perspective. I like that. Here now is the definitive Mata version of Tahu, and this might be my favorite of the bunch of the Mata revamp versions, because that just looks really nice, and it also hits me right in the nostalgia, because, I don't know, it captures the vibe of the original set in possibly the best way. And it reminds me just how good the G2 Tahu mask looks. Gosh, I love that design. The lower waist on Tahu here is very similar to Kopaka's waist that we were talking about before, and like I said, it's got those lovely macaroni bricks on it. But what I like here is that Brandon has used a train wheel piece in red, where previously we saw on Kopaka that they used that interesting pulley wheel piece there. I like the difference here. It's also cool to see how the limitation of certain pieces only existing in certain colors works in Brandon's favor here. So he had to pick something else that was a little bit different. And I don't know, I think that train wheel piece really fits with the rest of the textures on this torso a lot better. So really smart choice to use that here. One last thing that I adore is the weapon change on Toa Mata here. I love that blade. Instead of it being a fire blade, it looking more like an actual definitive sword. That's cool. This is using one of the tech blade pieces in trans orange that came on this specific Ninjago Dragon set. And yeah, what a fresh, different take on Toa Mata's weapon. I adore that. So cool. And with that, we've spoken about all of the different Toa Mata and Nuva revamps that Brandon Builds has made. These are so cool. I hope that looking at these has given you a bit of inspiration for your own builds, and if it didn't, I hope you just had a good time looking at these phenomenal builds in much the same way that I did. Please go follow Brandon on Instagram and Flickr. I've got links in the description there if you want to check out his stuff, which you definitely want to. He's a phenomenal builder. So go check the links in the description, please, and thank you. Also in the description below is the submission email, so if you want to submit your own MOCs onto the show, you can submit them through that. And in the description below is also links to my own social media, so you can see stuff that I've got going on over there. Thank you for watching, guys. Happy building, and bye for now.